Hello, and welcome to Making Known the Unknown. My name is Tina Tarryk. I'm your host. And with me today is Reverend Hewitt, medium and founder of the Gifts of the Spirit Church in Chesterfield, Connecticut, and Sidney Schwartz, teacher and Bible researcher from Hackensack, New Jersey. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi. Thank you.
In today's show, we will be discussing Gifts of the Spirit Part 8, and more specifically, the types of gifts of the Spirit we'll be discussing will have to do with direct voice, of which one type of direct voice, which is referred to people, physical people hearing spirit, is trumpet mediumship. And with that, I'm going to turn this over now to Sidney Schwartz. Sidney, trumpet mediumship. I'm lost. This one takes the cake. What is this about?
Well, again, it's a very unusual type of mediumship because you remember the spirit people living in a very high dimension. So normally their wavelengths are way beyond our capability of hearing. So for us to be able to hear them without having the gifts of the Spirit is what we're talking about. It's called direct voice. The first type is trumpet mediumship. Basically what happens is that the medium there's a medium who goes into trance. And when the person goes into trance, the spirit people, and there's a lot of spirits involved in doing this, there's a lot of chemists involved, there's people involved keeping the body going and so forth. They withdraw ectoplasm from the body. And ectoplasm, again, is found within the cells. And they take this and they form a voice box. And then they take a trumpet, which looks like this. It's a aluminum cone, okay, like a megaphone. And they take that ectoplasm and they put it into the trumpet. This acts as an amplifier. They speak through that voice box. They make that vibrate, and the voice comes out. And physical people can hear the voice of spirit. It's quite taxing on the medium to do this. All physical mediumship is quite taxing. In order for this to happen, you have to be seated in the dark. If the camera can zoom in on this trumpet here, you can see there's certain bands of tape that are on here. These are fluorescent tape. So what mediums normally do is they take it to the light and they charge them up, just like the old clocks before you had digital clocks.
Right.
They used to have this fluorescence on them,
Okay.
and so you could see them in the dark.
Okay.
The lights go down, and the trumpets are on the tape. I'll put it on the table or on the floor. Okay, and you're sitting in the dark, and you can see the bands around here. And what happens is that the spirit people then, when all the conditions are right, the trumpet will rise into the air, and sometimes they move them around. We have another trumpet here. Carl, why don't you bring that other trumpet around? We were at a seance in Chesterfield, Indiana with Bill English. He had 3 trumpets. This is a smaller trumpet that students usually use. He had 3 trumpets. And all 3 of them went in the air. So, Carl, if you could take one and kind of recreate what we saw. Yeah. The trumpets went up in the air, and they were all dancing. They were all going around the air, and the medium couldn't fake it because he didn't have 3 arms. I can't move all 3 of these trumpets, right?
Right.
They were all moving in different directions at the same time. Then the 3 trumpets came down, and the 1 trumpet came up, and we started to hear the voice.
For instance, if the voice is coming to you, the trumpet would be just about there, and you would see these bands, so you know it's right in front of you.
Okay.
And the voice, whoever that was from the other dimension talking to you, the voice would come out of here. And most of the time, it's as clear as crystal. It's just like it would sound over a telephone. Over a telephone. So
now, let me get this straight. You go to visit a medium who goes into trance.
Yes.
You're in a room with other people.
Yes.
Okay, this is not just one person at a time.
Sometimes it's one person.
Okay.
I was at a private trumpet seance, yes.
For these bands to glow, the lights have to be out, I assume?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Well, let me jump in here.
Okay.
The ectoplasm coming from the physical body is similar to, but not the same thing as emulsion on film. Light will destroy it. Because I always question that. Why do you have to sit in the dark?
Okay.
You see?
Right.
And this is why we have to sit in the dark. And these bands is only to prove where the trumpet is at the time.
All right. Good. And there are always 3 trumpets?
Sometimes 4 and sometimes 5, depending on the medium that does the work.
Okay, then at some point these trumpets
All lift
spin
up.
around, lift around, lift up.
All
Okay.
lift up, and
All
they're
right.
moving around the room. They never touch each other. You never hear them.
And
But when the energy goes down, they all drop on the floor, just glunk.
But they're away from where the people are sitting who
They'll
are,
come
who are
right
there.
up. Yes, but they'll come right up as close as this.
Right.
So two of them will stop, and a third, or at least one trumpet, will come over to an individual who's
Right.
there in the audience.
You see, I don't have this gift. I don't have this gift. But I talked him into going with me on one of the trips. And when we went in that seance to have this, I was so thrilled because, you see, he'd never experienced it. And when the trumpet came around right there, and his father's voice came out of the trumpet. I've never seen anybody so angry in my life after this was over with, because he knew then and there that had been a cover-up. There'd been a cover-up. They don't want people to know the truth about this. They call it, this is evil, this is the work of the devil, and all of this business. They don't want people to know the truth.
They knew there was a cover-up. Are there examples in the Bible of trumpet?
Oh, sure.
Mediums?
In fact, you know, it's quite interesting coming from a Jewish background. And people who aren't Jewish know about the Jewish high holidays. They've heard about it. And in the Jewish high holidays, they sound the shofar. The shofar is the Hebrew word for the trumpet. And there's such a contradiction, because when this happens in a synagogue, they blow a ram's horn. They take a horn from a ram, and they bring it to their mouth, and they blow it. And they make a sound through it, just like you would a trumpet. And they have to do a certain pattern of this and that. But if you read what it says in the Bible, in Numbers chapter 10, verse 1, it says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, make 2 trumpets of beaten silver, which you shall use in the assembling of the community and the breaking of camp." The reason it says that is for a voice to be used this way, this has to be made out of metal. Okay? This obviously is aluminum, because a silver trumpet would cost a fortune, and they get kind of banged up anyhow. So today they use aluminum, but in those days they used silver. So the trumpets in the Bible times were made out of silver, and that's just one of the ways this gift is covered up.
So they don't want people to understand that it's a trumpet, so they've used a ram's horn instead.
Right.
So what
Yes.
do they do? Just blow through the horn and make a sound?
They make a sound,
And that's it.
and that's it.
And there's no message from the horn, I assume.
No message from the horn, not at all. Not like the way it was in the Bible.
What would people do when they heard a ram's horn? I'm just curious.
Well, I think they used to sound certain patterns, and then it would mean something. You know, like they would use it like in battle, and they would for retreat or charge.
Like a Morse code or something
Right,
like that,
right,
maybe.
right.
Okay, I see. So it really was lost.
Yes.
If there was any intention for messages or communication.
Right, because they were using ram's horns instead of metal trumpets.
Now, what is the connection that I've heard about trumpets and the Ten Commandments, or Moses, or there was something there in the Bible I remember.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. So many people, everybody's heard of the Ten Commandments, but they really they don't. They think of the Ten Commandments as being written down by Moses, which they were, but that's not actually what happened at first. See, what spirit people, they're able to see into our future. And they knew that the Hebrews were going to be traveling for about 40 years, going from Egypt into the Promised Land. And they knew they weren't going to be too happy on that trip. They also knew that the people would get dissatisfied with Moses, because Moses was hearing the voice of the Spirit clairaudiently. And eventually they were going to say, he's just making that up. Why should we do this, that, or the other? He's just making it up out of his own mind. Because they can't see the gift of the Spirit. You can't see clairaudience. The medium hears it and he repeats what's being said. So they're saying Moses is making it up. So the Spirit said to Moses, we're going to come through so that everybody can hear directly. And it says in chapter 19 of the book of Exodus, it talks about all the preparations that had to be made for this to happen. And it starts with verse 9. And it says, and the Lord also told him, which is Moses, I am coming to you in a dense cloud. That cloud was ectoplasm. So that when the people hear me speaking with you, they will hear it. They will always have faith in you also. When Moses then had reported to the Lord the response of the people, and then the Lord added, Go to the people and have them sanctify themselves today and tomorrow, make them wash their garments, make ready for the third day, and on the third day the Lord will come down to Mount Sinai before the eyes of all the people, and set limits for the people all around the mountain and tell them to take care not to go up to the mountain. It's very important that the medium not be disturbed, because if he's disturbed with this type of physical mediumship, it could even cause his death. So they set a boundary, said nobody come any closer. In verse 19, things start to happen. In this particular Bible, which is the New American Bible, it says, "And the trumpet blast grew louder and louder while Moses was speaking, and God answered him with thunder." This is a very mistranslated verse. There's all different ways that it's translated. The King James Bible would read, "And the trumpet grew louder and louder while Moses spoke, and God answered him with a voice." Now, part of the problem that's going on here is in the Hebrew, okay? The trumpet is called a shofar, okay? And the word thunder is the word kol. So it said, God answered him with, the kol is a voice. So they talk about the voice of the trumpet a lot of times, okay? So, but the kol can also mean thunder. So in this case, it's just a mistranslation. It's an either-or type thing. V'kol can be thunder. It could be with a voice. So in this case, this Bible said thunder. Another Bible will say with a voice. But if you understand what's happening, God was speaking to the people. The Spirit was speaking to the people directly. It had to be a voice. Okay? And then what happened was that they started to give the Ten Commandments. All the people heard this. And then verse 18, it goes on to say, "And when the people witnessed, after they heard all the Ten Commandments, when the people witnessed the thunder and the lightning and the trumpet blast and the mountain smoking," and sometimes it was the sound of the trumpet, "they feared and trembled. So they took up the position farthest away and said to Moses, 'You speak with us and we will listen, but let not God speak to us lest we die.'" They were afraid. They didn't understand it. Okay? They didn't but they were hearing this voice coming out of the trumpet, and they were hearing it with their own ears.
Now, you would think the way some of the Bibles portray this, that Moses, and this is what I was referring to begin with, was speaking through a trumpet, like we would use a trumpet now to sound off, like a ram's horn would be used to make a sound.
Or a megaphone,
but
yes.
in fact, that wasn't the case.
No.
So he was hearing something through the trumpet.
They were hearing the voice of Spirit.
And the people were afraid.
And the people were afraid. And you know, it's really kind of interesting, Tina, because if you think about it, here's one time in history where you have a record of the Spirit speaking directly to the people. And the Spirit is giving all these rules of how the people are to live. Okay? Don't steal, don't murder, to keep the Sabbath, honor your father and mother, all the Ten Commandments that you know. But you know, it's surprising there wasn't an 11th commandment. And the 11th commandment probably should have been, "Thou shalt be afraid of the devil, and he's after your soul, and don't do anything evil." If the devil really existed, this was the perfect opportunity for the Spirit people to say, "Hey guys, be careful of this guy, he's out to get you." But there's no mention of it, is there?
That's a very good point. When you think about it, you're right. You would think that that's something that people would be warned of.
You would think if God's that important about all these moral issues, he'd be concerned about your soul. And he'd want to protect it so it would get to his kingdom and not the other, if there was such a place.
There's never been an entity from the other dimension speaking to me that did not tell me that there was no such thing as a devil. It was created by Christianity to put fear in the minds of the people so that they would have to come to church and, of course, bring money. And they often told me, they even told me that the churches were nothing but franchises, just like the burger place we have here on the planet today. I said, "You're talking about McDonald's?" And they said, "Yeah, among a few."
Now, you realize, of course, that saying that is going to be arousing a lot of interest, concern, and a whole variety of emotions from people, never mind the fact of how the Ten Commandments came to be.
Yes, but Spirit told me just recently, and this is why they want me to go to this new place in North Carolina. They said that the first thing they want me to talk about is to ask the people, the public, "Have you got a brain?" Of course they have. "Have you got a mind?" Yes. Then they want them to start using it first. If you don't use it, and think for yourself, how can you accept anything like this? What he just said about the 11th commandment, that's heavy stuff. And what they told me about the franchises, All people have to do is think about it themselves. This is heavy stuff. And I told him I wasn't going to say it in front of the cameras, but I was just told to say it. And I did.
Thank you.
When we were in Chesterfield, Carl's Indian chief came to him. And you have to remember that in a trumpet seance, basically there's one spirit who's usually operating the same trumpet, and he's like the MC, master of ceremonies of the whole seance. And he'll come and introduce the spirit that's going to come in. And so this master of ceremonies said, "Uh-oh, we have an Indian here." And there was a bit of silence. And then all of a sudden, we heard, boom! This tremendous bang, the room shook. It was just unbelievable. And all of a sudden, this trumpet that we could see started to go around like this, and you know how the Indians chant, "Yah,
Yes.
and he was making this trumpet dance around, and all of a sudden it came in front of Carl, and he started to talk.
And he started talking to me.
So that's not, I mean, let's face it, a trumpet seance is already unusual. Now within this seance, you've got some unexpected entity coming through, spirit coming through, and treating this trumpet differently, and to speak to Carl.
Well, that was my, he is my control.
Okay.
Control meaning that he protects me from any other mischievous spirits over there, see. He told me many times that he knew me before I was placed in the womb. Well, that's in the Bible quite a few places, pertaining to prophets, you see.
So this spirit you knew,
Yes.
once it's a he or a she, had come through and spoke to you.
After I got out of there, I said, all you wanted to do is show off.
How do you know it's that spirit or that
Oh, I can
that
tell by
entity?
the vibration, you know. I can tell by the vibration. Yeah.
I remember what he said. He was so in awe of this spirit, this experience, especially after that thunderous entrance that he made, that Carl said, "I feel like I want to get down on my knees, you know, before you." And the chief said, "No, I don't want you to do that."
So the
Into the
chief,
trumpet.
this
Yes.
spirit's called the chief.
Yes,
Yeah.
Chief Lone Eagle.
I call him the chief. He was a chief in his tribe when he was in physical form. He was a Tuscarora Indian chief.
Really?
And he led me, when I was a young boy, about 13, I guess, he led me to where his body was placed in the earth. And sure enough, there were artifacts found there. Today, there are homes all over the place in that place. People went and dug up the place and built homes instead of
Really?
me. It was hollow ground.
So it was covered over. A burial ground
Yeah,
was covered
yeah,
over.
yeah.
Not unlike many others.
But you know, if you go back and study the Indian races, they knew, long before people came over here with these books, they knew that God was within. They knew there was a happy hunting ground they would go to. They knew there was a great white spirit. You see, these were good people. They weren't savages like they tried to make us out to be.
So this is information that you've also
Yes,
learned
yes.
and has been told to you by.
They're very spiritual people, the Indians.
All right.
Very spiritual.
Now the trumpet. You said there was an MC. There's a person who is
Yeah.
running the show, so to
Yes.
speak.
And-
And what does the MC do after that?
He controls what's actually happening, and every so often he'll say the energy's going down, and therefore we need to build up the energy. And so he makes people sing because they take that vibrational stuff, and that's part of the energy they use to make the trumpet speak.
Let me jump in here. That's why today in Christian churches they have songbooks, and about every 20 minutes they would sing a song. It's to build the energy up. That all goes back to the time that people accepted this work, and that is the only time, the reason they ever sang. You see, if you were in a seance like we've been into, you would realize that you would feel, all of a sudden you'd feel tired, and then they ask you to sing a song, and sing some simple song, you know, like You Are My Sunshine, everybody joining together. Within a matter of minutes, that tired feeling you were having returns back to normal, and you feel good again because the energy. I don't quite understand all of this, but I do know that they have to have the energy, and they explained to me that this was borrowed from the ancient religion, whereas they would have to sing a song every few minutes.
And perhaps some of the Native Americans chanted the way they did
Yes.
to accomplish the same
Used
Right.
drums.
result. The
Drums, too.
drums. Okay, all right. That's interesting. That all ties together.
Tina, in 1985, I went to Camp Silverbell, and I had the opportunity to have a trumpet reading. It was a private session. And I've taken some of that tape and I've edited it down because it was a 30-minute session, and I've edited it down to a few minutes. And I'd like to have this played, but before they play it, I would like people to listen to the voices, because you're going to hear like a little joy spirit, which is like a little child. Her function is to keep the energy flowing, make you laugh and everything, and that's to keep the energy up. But listen to all the way the different voices, the different syntax, the different grammar that's used for the different people that are going to be speaking. So if we could have that video clip now.
Thank you.
Ephrata, Pennsylvania. I was privileged to have a private trumpet reading with Reverend Daniel Taggart, who allowed me to record the reading. Please listen to excerpts from this reading, and you too will hear the voices of spirit speaking from another higher dimension.
Hello, Uncle Sidney.
Hi, how are you?
This is Reverend. How are you doing?
Very good.
I know you are. You're doing a lot better than what you think.
That's good to hear.
Are you going to want to write books?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it.
You're going to write 5 of them.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to be busy.
Yes. I got Lewis's here too. And I got your Black Hawk here.
Good.
And I got Dr. Emerson here too. Dr. Emerson is a universal money man. Your grandma be Sylvia.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I got her here, and I got Joseph too.
Good.
And who's Harry?
He's my father.
Oh, is that why he's looking at me kind of like the way he is?
He's still not used to this, I don't think.
Right. Now, what?
Hi, Grandma, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Okay. How you been so far?
Oh, I'm doing fine. I love you.
I love you too.
Is she sort of new to all this?
Yes, very new to all
Oh,
this.
all right. Because she's just sort of, she's not sure. She's just looking at me saying, I don't know about you, little girl.
Yes.
How you know?
Hi, how are you?
I do all right.
That's good.
Yeah, you know who I be?
Are you Black Hawk?
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. Me help break people, let them know we're okay.
Okay.
Yeah, they just a little shy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, nothing to worry about. They all do fine.
Good.
You do fine too.
Thank you.
Yeah. BC, doctors with you help you work hands to do book.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah, they say much to do on paper.
Yes.
Yeah, be glad I not have to write.
Were you in the library with me?
Yeah, me enjoy looking at pictures.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I always dare protect you.
Good.
Find out new doors opening up for you.
Yes?
Yeah, maybe throw a book with a picture of Black Hawk in it.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, do you see what your engine look like?
No, I don't follow you, Black Hawk.
What Black Hawk said confused me. I could not understand how I could possibly receive a picture of Black Hawk. However, 16 years later, I did receive a picture of Black Hawk at one of Hoyt Robinette's seances where he produced precipitated cards.
Always keep close.
Thank you.
Be good.
Okay, thank you very much, Black Hawk.
This is Dr. Emerson.
Pleasure to meet you, Dr. Emerson.
Greetings, my son. And I come to you today only to help you with your awareness. There is many doors opening to you, as you are well aware. And we from the spirit side are pleased with your progression. Use your knowledge, my son, for the highest good always. And as you walk with spirit, spirit will walk with you.
Thank you very much.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Well, that's kind of wonderful.
Sure is.
And you use, what is that, a computer?
Yes, I use a computer.
This is Dr. Lewis.
Hello, Dr. Lewis.
Greetings, my son.
Greetings.
Yes. I am here with you today only to give you the encouragement of going on. last we met, there were many doors open to you.
Yes, that's right.
And as the new world has been with you, you have done very well. And I am proud to say that I had a little bit to do with it.
Yes, you did.
Yes. And I want you always to know that I will work closely with you.
Thank you.
Anytime you need me, please do not be afraid, and please do not hesitate to call me, for I am with you to help you in any circumstance. Do not be afraid, my son,
Okay.
for we work closely with you.
Thank you.
He's doing real good. I haven't heard from Dr. Lewis in a long time.
Really?
He and I used to play together.
Yeah.
And he used to scream at me because I was such a little cut-up.
Oh.
That's all right.
Yes, I'm sure.
Well, we're going to bring my daddy back.
Okay.
Just remember one thing.
What?
I'm as close as a thought, and I'm as warm as a heartbeat.
Okay.
If you think about me in love, I'll be there.
Sure.
Okay?
Okay.
All right. Love you.
Love you. Bye now.
Thank you, Sidney. That was very, very interesting. I could almost guarantee that many of our viewers have never heard anything like that.
That's
of
true.
Of course, what we were looking at were pictures of the trumpet and the names of the people who had come through in spirit
Right.
afterwards.
The interesting thing is that I've heard Black Hawk through 3 or 4 different mediums, trumpet mediums. His voice always sounds the same. It's just as if a friend of yours is speaking to you here in this country, or if he was in Paris, France, the voice would sound the same through the telephone. It works the exact same way. This is basically the telephone system to the spirit world.
And you knew their voices,
Yes?
and their voices were the same as you remembered them.
Right. That's because I had heard them before. This was my second or third experience with trumpet mediumship, yes. But Black Hawk came through and I knew exactly who it was.
That's a powerful example
Yes.
of a trumpet seance. Thank you for bringing that clip. The next type of direct voice we're going to talk about a little bit is independent voice.
Independent voice basically is trumpet mediumship without the trumpet. Spirit people get the ectoplasm and they don't need the trumpet and you just hear it. The interesting thing is that the voice will sound 100% exactly like it did in the physical world when the person was alive. I have a small clip from Leslie Flint, who was an independent voice medium. Here's a book about him. And Winston Churchill spoke through him. And I have a clip of what Winston Churchill sounded like in his physical life and what he sounded like coming through Leslie Flint's independent voice mediumship. So if you could run that clip, please.
Thank you.
I was fortunate to find a voice clip of Winston Churchill on the Time magazine's website. When you compare the recording of Winston Churchill's physical voice to the one produced through Leslie Flint's mediumship, there is no denying that the voice is identical.
If the British Empire lasts for 1,000 years, men will still say, this was their finest hour.
Anything that you can conceive of, you in your world today, possibly more than at any other time in its history, are going through a condition of faith which has in nature means that you are falling on the very brink of destruction.
Thank you. That was a very interesting clip. Now, just like the other spirits' voices came through the trumpet, this person's voice, Winston Churchill specifically,
Yes.
didn't have to come through a trumpet.
Right.
How interesting. And the comparison between what his voice sounded like before he passed into the spirit world is really a match, I think.
Yes.
The only other thing I would add here that we haven't really touched upon briefly, if you will, if you find any examples of independent voice in the Bible.
Yes, and in the book of John, in chapter 12, verse 29, 28, it says, "Then the voice came from the sky, I have glorified it and will glorify it again. And when the crowd of bystanders heard the voice, they said it was thunder. Others maintain an angel was speaking to him. Jesus answered, the voice did not come for my sake, but for yours." So he was saying that this gift was the people were able to hear the voice of Spirit directly and to know that that was possible.
Okay.
Independent voice means that they don't use a PA system, and everybody in the hall, even if there's 10,000 people in there, they would all hear it at the same volume.
Really?
Absolutely.
Regardless of where the person
Yes.
was standing in that room.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, that's something that I think everybody should experience.
Yes.
And hopefully, as a result of this show, these series of shows that we're producing, this will heighten the awareness of many people regarding making known the unknown. And that is all the time we have for our show today. Gifts of the Spirit, Part 8. Thank you, Sidney Schwartz, and thank you, Reverend Carl Hewitt.
My
Thank you
pleasure.
for joining us.
Thank you.